And it looks like we're live. Hello, writers. This is Ian with Writing Launch, and we are back with a second webinar. If you missed the Wednesday one, we had some connection issues with YouTube, but we are back and good to go. So today we're going to be doing a redo of the webinar from Wednesday. So if you missed it, no big deal. We're doing it now. And we're going to be going over how to get paid as a freelance writer. I'm going to be doing also a Q&A at the very end of the webinar. So if you have any questions now about getting paid as a freelance writer, please put them in the comments. We'll go over them at the end. And if you have any questions about freelance writing in general, feel free to ask away those questions as well. So today is going to be a very fun day. We have a lot in store for you. And we're going to be re-announcing a pretty big change to the Writing Launch program. So if you missed that on Wednesday, you'll be hearing about it as well. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and let's go ahead and start the webinar. The slides up. Here we go. All right, so we're going to be drawing all of this information from our No BS course on freelance writing. It's our flagship course for freelance writers, and we're going to be talking about specifically 3 different issues about getting paid as a freelance writer. And this one big question that I think a lot of you have is simply that: how do you get paid for freelance writing? We've heard a lot from writers who have trouble getting paid for freelance writing, a lot of writers who have never gotten paid before, and it's really tragic because there are very easy ways to fix that. And I want to talk about a few aspects of that today, and hopefully help you out and help you get paid. So I want to talk about first the 3 basic steps to getting started with freelance writing, and these will tie into what we're going to be talking about later on in the webinar. The first is about branding yourself. Now, I'm aware that this is probably a foreign concept to many of you, and that's simply because branding is sort of a foreign concept to freelance writers. It's not something writers talk about a lot, but it definitely deserves a lot of attention. So we're going to be talking about finding out who you are as a writer, and asking these important questions like, what kind of writing do you do? And specifically, we're going to be talking about value, and that idea of providing value is going to be crucial when it comes to really selling yourself as a freelance writer. Next, we're going to talk about getting experience, how you can build up a portfolio, how you can find great clients. And we're going to actually go into specific techniques for finding clients, and especially about finding high-paying clients, because I know a lot of you think, oh, I can never get work that pays well. I've tried, it's just impossible. So hopefully today I will be helping you remedy that. All right, so let's jump right into talking about branding, and specifically why a brand is going to help you get paid. Because I know you might be sitting there wondering, why does branding help me as a freelance writer? So I'm going to go into that and hopefully help you see the connection between branding yourself and getting high-paying jobs. In short, your brand is what reflects your value. And value is a very important concept to have in mind when you're pitching to publications, when you're pitching clients. And real quickly, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of a brand, it's basically your professional footprint. That's how I would define it in a freelance writing context. All the popular brands like Pepsi, Apple, Walmart, they all have very well-known brands. Their image, their style, the kind of products they sell, things of that nature. And so that's the sort of thing that you want to do for your own career. And I would even go so far as to say it's the overall professional impression that you leave on people. I shared this quote on Wednesday, and I think it's very accurate. It's from the founder of Amazon, and he's quoted as saying, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I think that's very accurate. So you want to make sure that you have a very good brand, just to appear professional and to let people know that you are a good freelance writer. And your image, your services, and your value all make up your brand. And image and services are definitely important to focus on, but for this webinar, we're going to be focusing on value, because I can't stress that enough. That is the single most important thing that you can use in a brand. That's the most important focal point of a brand that you should have for yourself. Because if you don't have value, you're not going to get jobs. I'll talk about that a little later, but for right now, think about that concept of value. It's very, very important. And that's because when it comes down to it, you're really not selling your writing, you're selling your value. And this is because for many people, for most clients, for most publications that you're going to work with, they don't really want your writing. They want goals, right? So let's say you're working for a private client, and let's say you're writing a sales page, or maybe for a product. Or let's say it's a water bottle. So you're writing ad copy for a water bottle. And your goal is to help your clients sell the water bottle, right? It's not to just create a poetic sounding description. It's to accomplish a goal. And that's where your value lies, because you're selling that end goal. You're promising your client, you're saying, hey, I'm going to help you achieve this goal, whatever it is. Maybe that's getting more views on a blog page or more sales for a product or whatever the case may be. Your writing is really just a means to an end. So you want to focus on the end goal of the client. Think about how the other party is going to benefit. And this is why your brand is a direct reflection of your value, because if you build your value into your brand, you will make sure that your clients and editors know from the first minute they talk to you, they'll understand why they should go with you. And this is a very, very powerful technique that will help you get a lot more jobs. And basically, your brand is how you communicate your value to others. It's sort of the language of value, if you want to put it that way. A good brand will let others know what you can do for them. That's branding in a nutshell. This is a great topic. I highly recommend looking it up on your own, doing a little bit of reading and research. But for now, I just wanted to go over sort of the main bullet points of branding, especially as it applies to freelance writing. So let's take this a little deeper. Without a brand to communicate value, you are not going to be able to build a sustainable freelance writing career. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's the truth. And it's probably the reason that you're having trouble getting jobs is because you don't really have a brand. So many writers don't. But branding is great for businesses, right? And when it comes down to it, you're really a one-person business. You have, a thing that you're selling. You need a brand to help you sell that. So if you have a brand, you're going to find it way easier to get jobs, to build relationships with clients and editors. But without a brand, you're going to really struggle. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I've been struggling getting jobs, and especially getting high-paying jobs, you might want to ask yourself, well, do I have a brand? Is my image of value coming across to the client? Do my clients and editors understand what I can provide for them? So you want to be thinking along those lines. Because the bottom line is that if people don't think that you're going to provide value for them, they will not hire you. That is the brutally honest truth. And this is a big reason why a lot of freelance writers don't get hired for any jobs, is because they don't communicate their value well enough. And the reason they don't communicate their value well enough is because they don't have a brand to help them communicate it. So it's a big full circle type of thing. But yeah, if clients and editors are not convinced that you're going to help them achieve their goals, you're not going to get the job. It's the unfortunate truth. But once you understand this, you can start to realize that you need a brand to help you accomplish your own goals. And basically, a strong value-first brand is going to help you land more jobs. It's as simple as that. So enough talk about branding in general. Let's talk about how to build a brand. Now, this is by no means a conclusive study on how to build a brand. There are a lot of intricacies and finer details. But overall, I want to just go through, like I said, some of the main bullet points of how to brand. First, I would say, think about these two questions. What is your voice or your style? These are very important things to think about when you're talking about being a writer. And what value do you bring? So this is going back to what I was saying for the last 5 minutes or so. And these two questions work hand in hand to paint a picture of what your brand looks like. And what I would recommend is to create a mission statement that answers those questions. So a brief example might be, I'm a professional marketing writer who teaches others about brand design, which ironically is what we're talking about now. So you can see this starts off by declaring the voice and the style. I'm a professional marketing writer. And then what value do you bring? What do you do for others? So you teach others about brand design. It's a very simple statement, but it can really help you understand who you are and what you do for others. So I highly recommend doing this. In fact, if you have a piece of paper with you or maybe an open Word document or something like that, I would recommend doing one right now, just taking a second to write down a little something about what your voice and your style are and what value you bring, because this is very, very important when it comes down to branding yourself. So if you have time, take a second to do that right now. I'll move on, but definitely do this at some point. And like I said before, you want to think about value, but I want to get specific with it. So think about the specific tangible value that you're going to give to your clients and editors. So you want to think about goals that you can name, goals that you can measure. So this might be, as I mentioned earlier, more product sales, more page views, more social media shares. There are a ton of goals, but you want to make sure that they're specific and measurable. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for you to measure those goals and to find out if your brand is working or not. So you want to make sure that you think about the most specific type of value that you can think of, because the more specific that you get, the easier it will be to build that value into your brand. Basically, like I said, how are the other parties going to benefit? How are your clients going to benefit? How are your editors going to benefit? What goals are you going to help them achieve? That's what you should be focusing on. And this is why so many freelance writers don't get jobs. Like I said, this is a crucial mistake that a lot of people make. A lot of writers that I've seen go kind of on and on about their writing, why their writing is so good, because they think they're selling their writing. They'll say things like, I have these credentials, or I've won these awards, or something like that. And a lot of clients and editors don't care about your credentials. They care about whether or not you'll be able to help them. And this is a big mindset shift a lot of the time, because this just isn't something that comes naturally. But it's very important to keep in mind. So if you've been sort of falling into that camp of writers who go on about their credentials or their awards or why they're so good, take a second to try to reframe your perspective and really think about the goals that you're going to help others achieve. I know I'm kind of beating that point, but it's so important. And if you follow through with it, it's going to help you get so many more jobs. So today I could only go over a little bit about branding. So what I'm going to do is send you a bonus. It's called You Are Your Brand. It's the very first lesson from our No-BS course on freelance writing. So you'll be able to not only get an idea of what the No-BS course is like, but you'll also be able to develop and enrich your knowledge of branding. And it goes much more into depth about the ideas and concepts I've talked about here. So look out for that tomorrow. We're going to be sending you a few bonuses tomorrow. And these were from the webinar on Wednesday, but we're resending them to you again so you can have them all in one place. And this is the first one. So I hope you enjoy this. It's really important to pay attention to. Download it, read it, go over it, study it, make notes, do what you need to do. But I can't stress enough how important this concept is. So now, once you've gotten your brand down, you need to think about charging. And when we talk about getting paid as a writer, rates are pretty important. Now, there's a common myth that a lot of freelance writers think, and that's that you have to basically charge pennies to make it as a freelance writer. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to charge just pennies to make it as a freelance writer. You can charge really good rates and still get a lot of great jobs, still build relationships with clients, still make it as a freelance writer. So you don't have to, work day after day, slaving over a hot stove just for a few dollars an hour. And so I want to talk about some ideas that are very crucial to charging well. The first point I want to make is that you really need to know how to charge. The amount really doesn't matter as much as the method of how you're charging. So let me break that down. I think there are two reasons that most writers don't get paid well. These are the two reasons that I've seen time and time again. The first is that they just have bad clients, and we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes when we go into the portion of the webinar about finding work, finding clients. But the reason I want to focus on now, and I think this is the more prevalent reason, is that the freelance writers do not charge the right way. And that means there is a wrong way and a right way to charge, and very few people actually charge the right way. So what is the wrong way? You might be wondering. There are a few ways to charge that don't really give you the best results. One of them is hourly, and I bet a lot of you do charge hourly, and if so, I definitely encourage you to pay attention to this part of the webinar, because this could change dramatically how you think about rates. To give a little backstory on this point, this was something that I never did. I never charged hourly. I always thought it was a little impractical for me because I don't work in chunks of hours at a time. But more importantly, my idea of this was really transformed when I interviewed a freelance developer for the Nobius course on freelance writing, and that comes in, I think, week 2 when we talk about charging. And he made an excellent point about charging, especially charging hourly, because one of the things that he said that stuck with me was that hourly rates reward freelancers who take the most time. So if you're on an hourly rate, let's say 2 writers are on an hourly rate. One takes an hour to complete a job, the other one takes 5 hours to complete a job. Let's say it's the same job, just for the sake of argument. So the writer that worked 5 hours is going to get paid 5 times as much as the writer who worked 1 hour. And that's a really sort of bad way of charging, because it doesn't reward or incentivize a good work ethic, and it sort of incentivizes slacking off and taking a long time. And if you get a lot done, if you're a very economical freelancer in terms of managing your time, then you're going to really not benefit from an hourly rate. And also, the developer I interviewed made a point that when you charge hourly, it makes it seem like your time is pretty like not valuable. Like you can just sell your time instead of the product. And that's also a bad way to frame your offer. If you're not focusing on value, if you're focusing on your time instead, then you're selling the wrong thing. So those are just a couple of the reasons that stuck out to me. There are many more reasons why charging hourly is really not that good of an idea. But we'll stick with those two for the time being. So if you've been charging hourly, I'm going to explore a few alternatives to that. But also, another wrong way to charge, and this applies to many different types of rates, is basing your prices off the going rate. So many writers do this. The most typical thing I see with writers setting their rates is that they look at what other freelance writers are doing, and they go, oh, these other writers are charging really low rates, let's say a cent per word, a penny per word. And so they think, okay, I can't charge much more than that, or else I'm not going to get jobs, because that's sort of the competitive rate that's out there on the market. The problem with this is that it really destroys a freelance writing career, because it doesn't allow you to get any trajectory. Because once you're down in like the 1 cent per word range, it is so hard to move out of that. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. Maybe you've been stuck on a 3 cent per word job for years or months or whatever. It's a really bad situation to be in. And this is the basic idea behind this, and I think it's very bad, because since so many writers are just charging a pittance for their services, if you use their rates as reference points, you're not going to get anywhere as a writer. And again, this is an unfortunate truth that a lot of freelance writers just don't think about. But once you do, it sort of opens the door to being able to charge what you need, what you want. So I know it's tempting to look at the market rate and go, oh, I need to base my prices off that, but you really don't. So let me talk about some alternatives. Specifically, I want to talk about what I think is the right way to charge, and what I've found through experience has worked really well for me and for a lot of other freelance writers that I've talked to. First, you want to figure out how much you want to make. So instead of basing your prices off of what other people are doing, base them off of what you need to survive. So basically you need to, calculate your living expenses, food, bills, payments of any sort, things of that nature, and figure out how much you need to make. And then use that as your North Star to set a rate. If you do this, you're guaranteed to make what you want. If you feel like you have to stoop to what other people are doing, it's not going to work out well for you. And the second thing, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this, is charging per project. Not per word, although per word is okay, but certainly not hourly. Per project is hands down the best type of rate that you can use. So let's revisit that example that I talked about earlier about two writers doing the same job. One of them takes 1 hour and one of them takes 5 hours. If those two writers are both on the same hourly rate, then the writer who took longer is going to get paid more. But if they're both on per project rates, they're both going to get the same amount of money. So it's a lot more fair for the writers involved. So no matter what project you're working on, a per project rate is going to be much more worth your time. And it's also just very simple and straightforward. It's one flat fee for each project. It's very simple for clients to understand. It's very easy to invoice. If you're doing per word, you can sometimes end up with slightly messy calculations. But if you use just a flat fee, it's very easy to say, 100 per article or 200 per sales page or whatever the case may be. There's one nice number that's very easy for everyone involved. Now, per word is decent, and it is a very fair rate. It makes sure that no matter how much time you take, you get compensated for your work and not for your time. But it is harder for clients to visualize. And what I found is that most people will just think of it as a per project anyway, because let's say you're doing an article for 15 cents per word. If you're doing an article and let's say it's 500 words, let's say you have a 500 word article and it's 15 cents per word. Your client is going to have to multiply 500 words by 15 cents to get the final amount. So it might as well be a per project fee. I hope that makes sense. But this is just a great way overall to do things, and also it's so much easier for clients to understand. In my experience, when I've done per word, it's worked out, but clients always seem to be a little hesitant about it, or they just don't. I can tell they don't understand why I'm charging per word. Per project is just much easier. So if you haven't been charging per project, I highly recommend you do so. This is one of the tips that transformed the way that I was able to get paid, and it transformed how I was able to talk to my clients, relate to them, and build relationships with them. So I can't stress this enough. Please, please, please try charging per project if you haven't already. It's very easy. If you're charging per word, just think about how many words are involved. Use that to come up with a flat fee. If you charge hourly, then just think of how many hours it would take you to complete any certain project, and then just multiply your hourly rate by the number of hours, and bam, you have a flat fee, per project fee. So I can't stress this enough. Please, you owe it to yourself to try this out. So let me talk about a little more on rates, and then we'll move on to finding work. Now, if you're submitting articles to publications, if you're pitching, you'll find that publications will almost always pay a fixed rate. There might be a little variability in what they pay, but it won't be much. So usually that'll be like, that'll look like 100 for an article, or 75 for one article, or something like that. You might see like 100 to 150 for an article, depending on the length or the amount of research done or whatever. But generally, it's a fixed rate. So what you have to do is look at your own rate and use that to determine if a publication is worth writing for. And it's very tempting to sort of let yourself be paid less if the publication is bigger, but I think this is a really bad path, because if you want to make it as a freelance writer, you can't really make compromises like that. A lot of publications will tempt you with the promise of exposure, And there's that saying that artists die of exposure, right? And I think that applies for freelance writers too. The hard truth is that if you want to be a career freelance writer, you cannot make a habit of writing out of writing for free. You just can't do it. If you're trying to get paid and you're doing free work, there's just a huge disconnect there. And this is something I'm not going to go over too much, but if you're interested in reading more on this, there was a big hubbub a few years ago about Will Wheaton, who you might know from Star Trek. And he was asked to, I think, write an article for the Huffington Post and share it for free. And he declined because, that was work that he had done, and he didn't want to just give it away for free. He wanted to be rightfully compensated. And that started a big discussion about, freelancers getting paid, where the limits of free work lie. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But right now, just bottom line, if you want to make it as a freelance writer, you just can't write for free, and you can't take on low-paying jobs that are not worth your time. It's just a waste. It's a waste of your time, of your energy, of your life resources. So please just think about publications in terms of how much they pay and not necessarily how big they are. Now, let's talk about writing for just private clients, because this is a much different animal than writing for publications. When it comes down to it, clients want results. They want value, and they will happily pay for it. This is a big misconception that a lot of freelance writers have. They think that, the clients just kind of want cheap writing. And that I understand why that's a mainstream thought, but at the same time, clients really, they will be happy to pay well and pay more even than they said they would if you can convince them that you will help them achieve their goals. And I alluded to this earlier, but I'm reiterating it because it's such an important idea. If you frame your offer well, and if you communicate what you're going to do for the client, they're going to be happy to pay your rate, more than happy, even if it's double or triple or 4 or 5 times, whatever they initially said or said they wanted to pay. And this sounds preposterous, but it's really the truth. And I've had success with this, framing my offer well and saying, well, look, here's what I can do for you. Here's why it's worth what it's worth. Here's what you'll get out of it. And then, all of a sudden they're singing a different tune saying, oh, okay, I'll be happy to pay you that. So again, this is another important idea to keep in mind. And this is another sort of paradigm shift that you have to undergo before you can really start to succeed as a freelance writer. Basically, just the idea that clients will be happy to pay more than what they said or pay serious money to get the results they want. And like I said, don't worry about the going rate. It's a very poor tactic for setting your rates, in my opinion. And if you do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, I wanted to briefly mention this because this happens a lot. What do you do about clients who say they're on a budget? So this will typically look something like, you send a response to a job posting. Maybe they didn't really talk about their pay, or maybe they did, and you were like, hey, I charge a little bit more, I'm a little bit more than this. Are you comfortable with a rate like that? And they say, oh, I'm on a budget for one reason or another. I can really only pay this much. I found that clients like this usually don't value writing, and a lot of times they won't even be passionate about their own goals. People like this are usually just looking for cheap writing. And I think this is mostly just because there are a lot of bad clients out there. That's a very, very common issue to run across. I'm sure you've had your fair share of nightmare clients. So if you come across someone who you can tell really doesn't value writing, I would recommend sort of shying away from that. And this is why finding the right type of client is so important. If you don't, then you could be stuck with people who are paying you pennies, like dollars per hour. It's a bad overall situation to get in. And so I highly, highly encourage you to think about the type of clients that you want, and that's what this whole next section is about. how to find the best work. Because maybe you've been sitting here this whole time saying, okay, Ian, that all sounds well and good, but how do I actually find these people who are going to be paying me so much money? And I will admit that it sounds sort of like a fairy tale, but let's dive into it a little bit, and I think you'll see just how practical this is. All right, so let's talk about just how to find work that pays well. Very simple idea, but it can be very intimidating. First, you have to look in the right places. So what I recommend is familiarizing yourself with job boards. Now, disclaimer, there are lots of great job boards. There are also lots of horrible job boards. And some are in between. Some will have really good jobs. Some will have good jobs and spam jobs at the same time. So you just have to sort of, get the lay of the land, scope it out, get familiar with it, and learn where the good jobs are. And if you find a job board that's really good for you, and if it's rewarded you with good jobs throughout your experience with it, then go back there, keep doing what works. But I recommend just going to all different kinds of job boards or places where jobs are posted, like Reddit, for example. That will always be my number one recommendation for writers who want to find jobs is Reddit. But just all the job boards out there are worth looking at because you never know where you're going to find the job. And if you're looking for publications to pitch, if you like doing articles for magazines or for blogs or newsletters or whatever the case may be, I recommend learning how to use Google well. And this is something that I've covered in past webinars. So if you're interested, a lot of our previous webinars on blogging and pitching have this information in it. So I'm not going to go over this too much, but if you're interested, do a Google search for advanced search operators. These are just little additions you can tack onto your Google searches to make them more specific. Very, very easy to master and very important if you want to find great publications. And when you find the right places, you also have to know what you're looking for. Job postings need to be well written, and they need to explain exactly what the job entails. If you leave a job posting scratching your head, it's probably a red flag. Don't go for it. So you should know exactly what is expected of you. And I recommend giving priority to postings that explicitly disclose how much you're getting paid. This is just for practical reasons. A lot of employers or hiring parties will purposefully withhold the pay amount so that they kind of sucker you in and get your interest, and then they maybe hook you emotionally in some way, and then they say, oh, I can pay this, and it's a very low rate. And by that time, when you're that far in, it's hard to say no, and because otherwise it feels like a waste of time. And in many ways, that's how people sell, right? So you don't want to be a victim to that. So many legitimate job postings will not disclose the pay rates, but just be very discerning in what kinds of posts you apply to. So give priority if you can find out from the job posting how much you get paid. Now for publications, usually you will need to pitch them before you get information on payment. I'd say about half the time that's the case. The other half, you'll be able to find the information on the writer's guidelines page, which is also called, the submission guidelines or the Write For Us page. So look there first, but if you can't find that information, you may need to pitch first, and then an editor will get back to you, letting you know what the rates are. All right. And lastly, you have to understand the type of client that you want. Because if you don't know the type of client that's best for you, it's really hard to sift through all those job postings and get the right kinds of clients. So my first criterion for a client that I work with is that they need to be communicative and professional. And those are just must-haves for me. It's very hard to work with people who are, sloppy in how they talk, or you can tell they really don't care about coming off professionally. That's a very, I think, poor image to have, and often it means that they're a problem client. And I know that kind of sounds like stereotyping, but unfortunately, in my experience, at least, it's the truth. So communication and a professional image are a must. And the client should also answer your questions in a very straightforward manner. They shouldn't, dodge your questions. A lot of clients will do that. I'm sure you've had that experience. If you have a question, your client needs to answer it very straightforwardly, very clearly. And don't be afraid to negotiate a little if you have to. And don't be afraid to justify your rates by communicating those benefits to your client. So let's break that down a little bit. When I talk about negotiation, I mean, let's say you're charging, let's say you're doing an article, just a blog post, let's say, and you're talking with somebody and you say, I charge 100 per blog post. And then they come back and they say, well, I can only do 60 per blog post. Is that all right with you? And if you don't get that hard $100 limit that you want, that's sometimes okay. Maybe you can come back with something like, because of the work I do and how much time I have, I really can't do this for less than $90, and just leave it at that. Because at some point, you're gonna have to call it a day. You don't want to stoop so low to where you're getting paid, a ton of money less than what you were asking. And if your client is sort of hesitant and saying, well, I don't really feel comfortable paying that, or maybe they just say I really can't, that's when you go, okay, look, here's what I can do for you. Here's why that is a good investment in your future. You want to try to get the client to think of your rate as an investment, because that's what it is. They're investing in their own goals and their own future. They're not just paying you for writing. It's a lot deeper than that. So don't be afraid to just go, hey, here's what I can do for you. Make a list, maybe a bullet point list. I recommend that a lot. And then just saying, here's what I can do for you. Here's how much I can charge. Let me know if that sounds good to you. And don't be afraid to, be nice but firm about it. So a couple more bonuses I want to send your way to help you with all of this, especially if you're interested in pitching the publications, because it can be really hard to find clients. It's a lot easier to find publications, and a lot of you who like creative writing, publications are a very easy transition into freelance writing, because there's a lot of room for both types of writing in many publications. So to help you out, I'm going to send you my road-tested pitch template. This is a pitch template, a structure that is based exactly on the ones that I've used to get published. So what I did was I looked at all of my pitches, I distilled them into one structure that was common in all of them, and then I just put it in a little document, and I'm going to be sending it out to you. So my hope is that this will help you create pitches that are very impactful, that get responses from editors, and get you published. Now, before you pitch, you need to know where to publish or where to pitch. And I went over some techniques on how you can do that. But to help you out even more, I'm going to be sending you our paid publishing guidebook, which is a directory of hundreds of publications, complete with payment information and links to their writer's guidelines pages. I say this all the time, but it's a fantastic resource, and I desperately wish that I had had it when I started out, because it would have made my job a lot easier. And we're giving it to you completely for free. We're going to send all of these bonuses out tomorrow, so keep an eye out on your email inbox for that. So yeah, I think this will help you a lot if you've been struggling with looking at publications, struggling to find good publications for you. I think this will help so much. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I just want to say a few words about our course, because like I said, we've made some changes that are very exciting. And I wasn't able to go over a lot today because I don't want to take up too much of your time. And this was just sort of an overview of the basics. But if you're interested in learning more, like I said, all of this information was taken from the No BS course on freelance writing. So that breaks down into a few different parts. There's 6 weeks, which means it's a fully comprehensive course, and it's especially aimed at new freelance writers. So it's not solely for new freelance writers, but if you're newer, you'll definitely get a lot out of it. But that said, no matter how long you've been freelancing, I'm confident that you'll be able to take something away from this course. And you can get detailed knowledge on everything that we've talked about here. So basically, everything that we talked about today, you're getting in the course a lot more detail on branding, finding work, getting paid, a lot more. This is step-by-step stuff. We basically hold your hand throughout the process from start to finish and show you exactly what you need to do to build a career as a freelance writer. And it lets you do just that. It's a 6-week course that just fully prepares you for a lasting career in freelance writing. This is information that has been taken directly from my experience as a freelance writer, from many other people's experiences. We interview, a freelance developer, another very successful freelance writer, and this knowledge is just sort of all of the best information packed in the one place. So if you're interested in that, I wanted to just remind you of that big change that we're going to be announcing very soon regarding the pricing of Writing Launch. We want to make this information as accessible as possible to you. So we're very excited about this change that we have planned. And basically, it's going to allow you to get all of the courses, which include the No BS course and 5 of our other courses, all for one low price. And if you're wondering how much, we're going to keep it under wraps for just a little bit longer, but we can promise you that you're going to really love it. And to give you a reference point, you're going to be able to get all 6 courses for much less than the price of a single college class. So it's not going to be nearly as expensive as college tuition, and it's going to be very, very affordable. So if you've been struggling in the past with having enough money to become a member, I think that you are going to really enjoy this change that we have for you. So if you're interested, you can sign up for the waitlist at writinglaunch.com. We're launching very soon. We're going to go live in the next few days. So if you're interested in signing up and if you're interested in seeing just how affordable this is, I highly, highly recommend heading over to our site at writinglaunch.com and signing up. You'll get information about when we open before anybody else does. And you'll be able to just be the first to know about the price change, about when we open, about all of the details and things of that nature. So if you're interested, writinglaunch.com, there should be a form on the homepage. Just put your email in, sign up, and you're good to go. So before we go, I want to do a little Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to send them my way in the comments. I'm going to read over them and make sure that I'm, I can be as helpful as possible. But also, what I would like you to do is leave a comment about something that you learned. It can be your favorite thing that you learned from this webinar, maybe something you're going to use, or just something you thought was particularly interesting, or something you'd like to learn about more, and put that in the comments as well. And I highly recommend you to go over everyone's responses and look at what everyone else is saying and try to get new ideas and concepts, because sometimes when you look at what other people are doing, it can be very, very helpful and give you new approaches to freelance writing. So yeah, we're going to go into the Q&A real quick. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to sign up at writinglaunch.com if you're interested. So let's take a look and see. And also, I should say that if you have any questions later on, we are more than happy to help you out. We're going to be answering questions through our email at support@writinglaunch.com. So that's our official email. Feel free to email us anytime. We'll answer as many questions as we can. And these can be questions about what you learned today, or just questions about freelance writing in general. It really doesn't matter. We're happy to help in whatever way we can. So we'll see if we have any questions, and then we'll call it a day. And I hope that this webinar went much better than the previous one. I hope it makes up for how bad the other one was on Wednesday. So let's start the Q&A. So we have a question from Mark. This is a very interesting question. Mark asks, what can a jack of all trades, master of none do in the freelance writing world? He basically talks about how he has a lot of different credentials, from working in the White House, which is very impressive, to business, to to investment, to poetry. And this is a very tough question to answer because it does vary for everybody. But I would say that, at least in my experience, the most successful freelance writers I know do specialize. And if you don't specialize, that is often a problem. Now, a lot of writers try to generalize themselves, and they work in all different kinds of niches, right? So you might be one writer who writes in gardening and finance and technology and health and like a bunch of different niches because they think, oh, that will make me more marketable. But in this day and age, what people are looking for is writers who know their stuff really, really well. They want specialists. So, for example, I specialize in 2 to 3 niches. That's it. I don't really write about a wide range of things because I have mastered a few niches. I'm comfortable writing about those. I know a lot about them. And as a result, I'm able to get a lot of jobs in those niches. So what I would recommend to you is to find just 1 or 2 areas and become a master of those fields, and then look for jobs there, because it's just so hard to get a job if you are, as you say, a jack of all trades. And that is sort of unfortunate because if you have a lot of different experience, it can be hard to sort of say, well, I can't really use some of that. But at the end of the day, people are looking for specialists. Publications are going to want writers who are experts in their field, or at least know a lot about their field, and clients are going to want the same thing. So that's what I would say, and that's a very, very good question. So we have another question from Natasha, who asks, are there any preferred job boards to look for freelance writing work? Yeah, I referred to this a little earlier. In some of our past webinars, I have mentioned certain job boards. I didn't this time because I think that every job board can be valuable. I found writing jobs on Craigslist. I don't recommend that, but I found them on there. So I think it all comes down to what you're comfortable with, the job boards that you find work for you. And it just varies from person to person. For example, there's a job board that is on problogger.com and, problogger.net, I believe. I'm not sure which one, but in any case, it used to be a very good job board. Now it's not so great, but I still know that people get a lot of jobs off of there. Some people have no luck, like me. I just haven't had success finding good jobs on there. So it's all about the approach that you take. So I would recommend just looking at all of them. And I think pretty quickly you'll be able to get an idea of which job boards are good for you and which ones aren't. So let's look at some questions. Okay, here's a good question. We have one from Janice, who asks, what do you do if your voice and style can be professional and fun? Okay, so basically, she goes on to say, I have previous experience as an admin assistant, so I'm able to do that. When I write my own stuff, I have a different voice, more relaxed. I would say there are basically 2 possible attitudes to take if you're able to write in more than one voice. Some writers would say, you should only write in one voice because you should specialize. Other writers would say it's good to write in more than one voice or style because that gives you more to work with. I belong more in that second school of thought. I think that if you have different styles, they can be very useful. So let's say that let's say you have a professional voice on the one hand and a really fun voice on the other. So what I would say in that case is to find niches that are good for those voices. So maybe you could write about marketing, but then you could also write about lifestyle, or maybe gardening or home decor or something like that. You can use that to your advantage, but you just have to be careful about it. You have to be careful that you don't you don't spread yourself too thin when it comes to having different voices. So I would just say use them when they're needed in context. We have another question from Michael asking, how does one search for job boards? What I would do is just go to Google and type freelance writing jobs. It's really that simple. There are so many freelance writing job boards that are exclusively for freelance writers. What I will also recommend is going to reddit.com. There are, and I've talked about this in past webinars, there are many places on Reddit where you can find jobs, where you can advertise your services, where you can respond to other people who have job postings. It is single-handedly my biggest source of freelance writing jobs. And the site can be a little intimidating. It can look a little crazy if you're not used to it, but it's really easy to learn. It's a lot easier than you might think. and there are many guides to starting out. You can just Google Beginner's Guide to Reddit, Reddit, and it's very, very easy to learn, a lot easier than you think. And there are a couple of communities on there that I found really helpful for finding jobs. But other than that, just Google freelance writing jobs. It's really that simple. You can Google just, job boards. You can go to more popular job boards like Indeed or Monster or, Career Builder. But I think overall, it's a matter of exploration, finding out what's out there, what works for you. And yeah, because you can get freelance writing jobs just about anywhere. It's all about how you approach it. So I think that's a great note to end the webinar on. Thank you so much for coming out today and joining us, or if you're watching this later, thank you for being with us and watching this. If you have any questions at all, I'm available to answer questions at support@writinglaunch.com. And don't forget to go to writinglaunch.com and sign up for the waitlist so you know when the course opens, and you'll be the first to know about that new low price. So I hope this webinar made up for the one on Wednesday. And if you, like I said, if you have any questions, send them my way, and I hope you have a wonderful day.